there is a reminder that we are the stories. As the sun was moving down towards the horizon, a fisherman was rowing his boat along the seashore, and in the last rays of the sun, he caught a glint of something up on an outcrop. And as he peered more closely, he thought that he could see the outline of a limb. So he rowed his boat over towards the shore and climbed the short distance, where he found a young woman splayed on the ledge, her limbs askew and blood sleeping out of wounds. Her golden hair that had caught the glint of the sunlight was splayed across the rocks. He put his head down to her mouth and found that there was still breath, still life in that body. So to himself he said, "Oh, I must take you home to my wife so that she can take care of you." So he lifted the slender body, carried it down to his boat, and took the young being back to his small house, where his wife immediately tended her wounds. She delicately felt along the limbs and said to her husband that nothing had been broken, but she was badly abrased and bruised. So they laid her gently, and the wife kept vigil through the night to see that nothing amiss took place. But in the middle of the night, the young woman awoke, and she sat up and cried loudly, "Where is he? Where is my baby? Where is my small Ben?" And the sound of her cries awoke the husband, who came in to find out what was happening. And the wife said to the husband, "It seems that she has lost her baby." And as the young woman became more coherent, she tried to get up. I must go and find him. I must find my baby. I cannot bear another loss." But they tried to placate her, and the husband said, Wait until morning. I will go and seek your child." So the woman rested a little, and the next morning the fisherman took several of his friends and went out to seek all over to see if they could find the child. But when they came back, he was unsuccessful, and the young woman insisted, even though she was still badly bruised and battered, that she take her leave of them and go to seek her child. She told them that she had put him safely between two rocks as she went to gather sticks to make a fire when she had fallen. So the young woman took leave of the fisherman and his wife, promising that if she found her child, she would come back to inform them. She traveled all over. She looked in every nook and cranny. She went from village to see if anyone knew where her baby was. But there was no success. Finally, exhausted, hungry, and thirsty, she collapsed under a bush. That bush was placed just where a troop of gypsies was making their place for the night. And a young gypsy child found the exhausted young being and went to tell her parents, who came and carried the young woman back to their caravans, where they fed her soup and listened to her story. Well, they were very sympathetic to her, but they said, "We have to move on in the morning, but in the place that we are going, there is an old, wise gypsy woman who may be able to help us." So the young woman went along with the gypsy troop, and when they came to the place, they guided her to the caravan, where outside sat an old crone, fierce in her appearance, black hair, her gypsy scarf around her head, black piercing eyes. But when she spoke, her voice was gentle as a breeze, and she invited the young woman to sit at her feet and asked her quietly, what was it that she sought? And the young woman told her story. "My parents died when I was 12 years old, and I wandered alone until I fell in love with a young farmer, and we married when I was 17. And we were so thrilled to find that I was with child. But my husband died of fever just before our son was born." And with tears pouring down her face, she said, "I cannot bear to lose any more. I have to find my child." The old gypsy woman, with great sympathy, said, "Perhaps I can help you. Let's be quiet a while." They were sitting in front of the fire, and the old crone put some more wood on the fire until it burned brightly. And they sat in silence. After some time, the old gypsy crone said to the young woman, "I found your bairn. He's been taken by the fairies. He is safe, but I cannot tell you how you may find him again. They have taken him to a secret place." "Oh," said the young woman, "please, please help me find my baby." So the old woman said, "Leave me. Come back in the morning. I have no powers to communicate with them, but I will do my best." The next morning, the young woman went back to the old crone, sat at her feet, and she said, "The fairies have taken your son into a place of celebration because they are about to crown a new king. I cannot tell you how you can find your child, You must seek that within yourself. But this I can tell you. You must have gifts that will allow you to exchange them for your child. The fairies are not able to make things for themselves. They must rely on stealing. But if you can supply them with gifts, you have a bargaining power. So the young woman, thanking the old crone, took her leave, and she wandered, and she pondered, and as she contemplated, a thought came to her, and she immediately set about her task. She went down by the seashore, and she gathered the feathery down of the birds that had come down to forage, until she had a great mound of delicate feathers, which she carefully took to a cave nearby. And then she went out, seeking along the sandy beach bone, and she found the skeleton of a sea being that had been washed clean by the ocean, just what she was seeking. She went back to her cave and got to work, cutting off her long golden locks. She took the feathery down from the birds, and using her golden hair, she wove a cloak so delicate that even a breath lifted it gently. Laying this aside, taking the remainder of her long golden locks, she strung the spine of the sea creature and made a harp. Pulling the strings of her hair, the sound of that harp brought the birds down around the cave to hear the sound. Carrying her gifts, she left the cave just as evening was falling. And somehow, is it magic? She was guided to a small hill, and just as the sun disappeared, she heard the sound of voices. And there, as she watched, a troop of fairies and elves came, and saying a few words, the hill opened up, and they began to enter into what was obviously a cavern. But just as the last fairy was about to enter, the young woman came out from her hiding place, wearing the cloak, which caught the rays of the moonlight and glittered, so that the fairy stopped and saying, "What are you, human, doing here in this sacred place?" But the young woman moved, and as she moved, the cloak of down and gold flowed around her, so that the fairy gasped. "What is that you're wearing? Give it to me." The young woman refused. "I will only part with it if you take me into your place." The fairy was so mesmerized by the beauty of the cloak that she took the young woman by the hand and led her into the cavern, where all the fairies turned and said, What is this human doing here?" But they too caught a glimpse of the beautiful cloak and were envious as the young woman put it around the shoulders of the fairy who had guided her into the cavern. During this time, the king, who was about to be crowned, was sitting on his throne and admonished the fairy for bringing a human into their midst. But the young woman boldly walked up to him, and at the feet of his throne she strummed the strings of her harp. Everyone gasped, and of course the king said, "Give it to me!" But she refused, playing a plaintive tune, so that even the fairies had tears in their eyes. "I will only give it to you if you return to me my son." Now the king said, to have a human child is a great acquisition. I will not give him up. But as she played more, and the sounds entered into his being, as it did with all of those fairies and elves, the child was brought and placed in the arms of his mother, who dropped the harp at the feet of the king, who immediately took it up and played a bright elfin tune, making all the fairies dance. The young woman took the opportunity to take her child and make her leave. She hastened back to the house of the fisherman and his wife, who celebrated with her the return of her child. There she remained in that community, her child growing to manhood as they lived happily. What is this place that we find ourselves when the three levels of life that constitute all of movement, all of existence in all its forms are present. No delineation, no separation. Karma, cause and effect, the magic realm, our dreams, our intuitions, our inspirations, called the occult, and that level that we all experience, where we feel empathy, sympathy, pity, oneness, compassion for life. Where are we when all three are present without separation in our life? How do we stay there? How do we remain in this place where every utterance, every touch, every thought unites all of these to bring blessing? Blessing to life. Look to your life, look to the moments, and see for yourself what qualities there are, present or absent, in this place. They're very clear. Find out for yourself, what is it that you've had to relinquish to attain this state, and what is it that maintains it? Over the coming days, that's what we'll explore. But for now, the recognition, as this folk story tells us, all of life in all of its dimensions must be present. Have you found your child? Thank you, thank you.